Bro, listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Can't get enough baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
All right, there's no human being. No, this is a fact. I told this to Kevin Cash, but I'm saying this definitively to Sam Dykstra of MLB Pipeline. There's no human being that I'd rather talk to right now. That's a fact. So, hi, Sam.
Hi, Rob. Again, you just kill it with these introductions every time. I mean,
it's true. It's true. I enjoy talking to interesting people. I think that's one of the great things about this podcast. Maybe not for anybody else, but for me. But I enjoy talking to interesting people. You're an interesting person, so I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course.
So it's we're a month and a half into the season, and I do think that sort of this season has been defined a little bit by but there has been the integration of young top prospects being called up or young players being called up, and everyone getting psyched up about it, and that's in large part, honestly, not that them getting called up, but them being psyched about it to you guys at MLB Pipeline. I mean, I love it, and you love it. Let's be honest. Paul Skenes was like a national holiday for you, wasn't it?
But seriously, I mean, it's great, especially because I had just seen him in Indianapolis before that. So you get tons of people turning to you and being like, who is this guy? I heard he touches 102. And I'm like, he does a lot more than that. He's got a splinter, which is a crazy pitch. He's got a really good slider that he can throw multiple different ways. He's got a change up and a curve. Like, having people come to you in those moments, I love it. And I love having the info and having seen these guys, especially if I saw them just recently, like Skenes.
All right. So Skenes came up, and he was pretty good. So let's start there. Like you said, we're very fortunate. You had seen him pitch recently, like in the minors. Then you saw him pitch in the majors. What was your takeaway from how it translated in that one game that we saw him? And what was your expectations? So in other words, we played the game, I remember that day on the Baseballs and Boring radio show. What was Paul Skenes' line going to be? What would you have said his line was going to be?
I would have said, I mean, it's easy for me to say this in retrospect, right? I probably would have said 5 innings.
4 and a third.
Yeah, I probably would have said he could have got through 5. I know it didn't work out that way. 2 runs, 8 strikeouts is probably what I would have guessed.
All right. Not that far off.
Not that far. Yeah. I mean, he's always been a strikeout guy. That he's going to get whiffs. It's just what happens, and we saw this on Saturday. Like, he had some pitches at AAA that guys you could blow 101 by, and that's not an issue. Guys are more willing to lay off stuff outside the zone, or if you hang a slider like he did, they're gonna kill it. I mean, you can't just get away with that. Sometimes they're gonna be sitting slider the whole way, and I think he got a little bit in trouble with his command in ways that he hasn't before. I don't know if that was nerves. I don't know if that was just he's never faced a major league lineup before. I mean, that's just a fact, even going back to spring training. But I think all the pieces were there that we saw that made him a dominant AAA guy. I mean, he really trusted that splinter really well and threw it in impressive counts and hit his spots with that pitch in particular. It's everything else that we know is good that can build from here.
Did you concur with the timing of him being brought up? Because everyone was freaking out. Why aren't you bringing him up? Why aren't you bringing him up? Yeah, you're bringing him up. Did you concur with that?
Hey, I would have liked to have seen him earlier. I mean, the stuff was there. Even talking to him in Indianapolis, I think the start I saw him, he came out after 65 pitches. And he was angry, like not on the mound, not visibly angry. He wasn't punching stuff in the dugout. But he said, like, I know how far I can go. I can go a lot deeper than this, but it's above my head. It's above my manager's head. There's no point in me making a scene out of it. But yeah, I think I can go deeper. He has that confidence in his stuff. He knows what his arm can do. We saw it at LSU. I'm not saying they should be throwing him 100 pitches right now, but like the stuff is there, and you have a Pirates team that has kind of been interesting in this first 6 weeks. If they had Skenes there as well, I mean, maybe it's an even more competitive NL Central.
So Skenes is an example of another pitcher. I think it was should be classified as a success, right? Right, his first outing, it was good.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who watched it and you know that he had some runs tacked on because of inherited runners that weren't his fault. Like it was a solid debut, about as good as one could probably hope.
It also, let's be honest, Sam, it looks different. I mean, I've been asking guys for the last couple of days, give me your guy who looked different. I've had some bizarre answers from I talked to Littell and Cash and these guys that everyone has a random guy who looks different, but we're going to remember Skenes as a guy who looked different. No matter what happens from here. I mean, you've seen enough of these guys. This guy looks different, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, he makes it look easy. I mean, it's incredible how easy 101, 102 looks coming out of his hand. And then when he can just add pitches like he's done, I mean, that slider is really good, but talking to him, like he didn't have it when he was at Air Force, when he started his college career. He was a fastball changeup guy. So he even has that in his back pocket. I mean, everything he does just looks relatively easy. Now, of course, all of my Twitter mentions are, when is his elbow going to break? And I don't have an MRI. I can't predict that future. But I think the thing compared to Strasburg, which everybody makes that comparison.
Yeah.
Strasburg had some effort, right? It was difficult for him to touch triple digits. He had to really stress that shoulder, and we saw how he broke down. I don't see that in the mechanics with the same way with Skenes.
All right. So that morphs into sort of the conversation we have in the pitchers and hitters and everybody being called up. But I looked at rookies this morning. I looked at the qualified rookies, and the qualified hitters for rookies, not that impressive. Colton Cowser was running away with everything for a little bit, but really it's the pitchers. And I'm trying to find some science, Sam, some reasoning. And I one of the things I do think that makes it very, very difficult for first-time hitters in the major leagues is because of the scouting reports. Like Kevin Cash told us in today's podcast, he's like, well, pitchers in the minor leagues, when they're facing these guys, are worrying about themselves. They're not worrying about the hitters. That now you're getting up here and Jackson Holliday is being picked apart from minute one. So am I reading the list of statistics incorrectly, or does it seem like, okay, this crop, what we have right now for rookies, for top prospects being called up, the pitchers are, it's the be all end all, and the hitters really, I don't know a ton who are jumping off the page.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that you think about who have done well, Colton Cowser, like he had a debut last year and it was a bad debut. I mean, he was not very good. They called him up in the middle of the season and they sent him back down. So he had that experience, and I think he's building on that, which gives me some confidence with Jackson Holliday. But in terms of like why the pitchers are ahead of the hitters, I think getting called up, it's because I think there's just so much tinkering that happens with stuff now that you can kind of take it to that next level. You look at somebody like Christian Scott in the Mets system. The fact that he added a sweeper is one thing that he's done even better. I mean, I don't know if Jackson Holliday could add anything except for experience. Like he could change his stance a little bit, but he can't all of a sudden incorporate a new swing like Christian Scott can. You look at Jared Jones. He's done a really better job of adding velocity, unless you're going to add bat speed. And I know that's a buzzword this week with everything that's dropped. But that's difficult to do. You can't just train yourself to add 5 miles an hour to your swing like some of these guys can do with pitching. So you're seeing some of these pitchers take a jump, and it's also coinciding with physical maturation and all that kind of stuff. Jackson Holliday, Jackson Churio, some of these guys who got called up and have really struggled. Heston Kjerstad hasn't gotten playing time. I think that's just because the gap between AAA and the major leagues is as big as it's ever been since I've covered the minor leagues in the last 12 years now. I think part of that is roster limits for the minor leagues in general. A lot of these quad A types, these guys with major league experience, aren't getting jobs necessarily at AAA. So it's a little bit more age appropriate for some of these younger guys, and they can kill AAA pitching. But those guys you see in the majors who have nowhere else to go, who aren't getting called up to another league, it's really difficult. I mean, Jackson Holliday was swinging at a lot of sliders that he just was not seeing those quality at AAA Norfolk.
Man, you just hit the nail on that. Again, you made me think. You always make me think. Thank you for that. It's true though. And the other part about it, you mentioned Cowser being brought up and then being sent back down, then dominating. By the way, his dad's off Twitter. I saw that yesterday. I gotta take a break. Baseball's hard, my son, whatever.
Right.
But and I've surfaced this example a lot lately, Sam, but when we had on Mike Trout and he talked about when he was first called up, and people forget he was sent down like the next year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And this seems to be a constant theme and also maybe a necessary theme. It's so rare now, and I'm going to stick with position players because what you said about pitchers, I want to get to that. That is nails, man. Like that is so right on. But with position players, it almost feels like you have to do that up, down, and then back up again. I mean, sorry, Junior Caminero and James Wood. I apologize, but you're getting sent back down. But maybe you aren't. Maybe you're like, maybe they're slow playing this to the degree that they won't have to. I don't know, but it seems like a theme here.
Yeah, I mean, all of these guys have the tools. It's just the experience that they lack. And the only way you can get experience is to play. And you might struggle. It's going to happen. Like it's a push and pull, right? Like you want to bring up a guy when he's good and ready and a fully formed product, but there's no way of knowing that until he faces major league pitching, the quality of which, like I said, is so much wider between MLB and AAA that it might take 50, 100 at bats. And are you in a position to give a struggling player 50 to 100 at bats? The Orioles aren't in that position right now. They are trying to compete. They believe in Jackson Holliday for the long term, but they're not going to just let him get his hacks and hit a $120 just for the heck of it for the team in 2025 or 2026. They're trying to win a World Series right now. That's why they made that trade for Corbin Burns. You look at the Brewers, they're able to kind of mask Jackson Chourio in different ways because he plays multiple outfield spots. So some days you might use him in center, some days you might use him in right, some days you sit him because they have multiple outfield options. He hasn't gotten set down yet for that reason. And he can impact the game a little bit better defensively than Holliday can. But yeah, it's part of like with all these calls for James Wood, and James Wood has been absolutely on fire lately for the Nats. Are you going to be able to cover him if he comes up and strikes out 40% of the time for 3 weeks? I think the Nats are in that position now. They're not competitive. They should be looking towards the future and just let James Wood take his lump if that's what happens. But it's got to be part of the conversation now, given how we've seen these top guys come up and struggle.
Who is the guy who has come up and again, none of these, I don't think any of these position players right now are blowing anybody away. Colton Cowser, we keep mentioning like early on maybe, but who is the guy that has impressed you the most at acclimating himself? I'll give you one, and it's necessarily, I don't think he has an 800 OPS, but the fact that Jackson Merrill has switched positions, like has decent numbers, is holding his own as a 20-year-old. Is he 21 yet? I don't know.
I think he might be. I think he might have just turned 21. He's around that though. Yeah.
But there was a lot. That's a lot. Like that's a lot. I mean, and he wasn't called up last year. This is his first go round. So that's the guy that I'm looking at. That's the guy I'm saying, good job to you. But still, again, it's not like this guy's numbers are going to blow anybody away right now. But for you, who is the guy that you're like, okay, that's impressive what he's doing as a rookie position player? That is.
Mine might be Andy Pajes of the Los Angeles Dodgers, somebody who's basically taken over the center field job out there. We didn't have him in the top 100 beginning of the year. We've had him in previous top 100s, but he's coming off shoulder surgery, and he's a power bat. Like, I want to see how that's going to translate early. He was hitting the ball hard for Oklahoma City, and again, it's like, okay, that's great. He's looking very much like the Andy Pajes that we knew from pre-2023. And then they called him up, and I'm like, okay, so he's got momentum. He hits the ball hard. Like the tools, like I was saying, are certainly there for the power. And it's worked out pretty well so far. It seems like he's dipping. Another guy, OPS is below 800 at this point. But he can play a capable center field. He can show some pop there. He has some defensive versatility. I think he might end up in right field long term. But like the Dodgers are one of those teams, very much like the Orioles. They can't afford to have a guy sink and still give him playing time, but Andy Paz continues to earn it in a way that's surprising for somebody coming off all that missed time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I mean, it's amazing though, Sam, like how many guys out of the gate in April. You have, I mentioned Kauser, Michael Bush, a guy who made Garrett Cooper expendable, and they were going to platoon him, right? And then all of a sudden, no, that's okay. So and even Merrill. I mean, Merrill started off, that was good for them, but there were so many guys. Conversely, you have the pitchers who just keep on keeping on, right? I mean, so let me ask you this before we get to the next wave. Sam Dykstra, you are a one-man voting machine when it comes to the Rookie of the Year in the National League and American League.
Ooh, oh, man.
All right. Give me, I'm not even going to ask you, I'm going to ask you not just for the top one in each. I'm asking the top 3 in each.
Top 3 in each.
Yeah, and here's my prediction.
Okay.
That's math would suggest that 6 players. I'm going to say 4 of them, don't let this sway your vote. 4 of them will be pitchers.
Oh, at least, yeah.
Maybe
I mean,
6.
I think the NL is like a lot easier for me to do off the top of my head, because you think of Imanaga would probably be first, Yamamoto and Jared Jones would be second or third, and you can put them in
there you go.
order.
I mean, lock it in. Although I would put Jared Jones over Yamamoto right now.
I think I would too. If we're talking about like voting today, then yes, I would probably.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
All right, yeah, season's over for some reason on May 15th.
These are not like the random or tremendously outdated BBWAA voting rules for like MVP, like games played number 2 for the MVP. No, these are like the baseballs and boring. Who would you vote for today? Rookie of the Year. So can we lock that in for National League? Imanaga, Jones, Yamamoto.
Yes, I think we can.
All right. Okay.
And then in the AL, I think I always have to double check if he's rookie eligible, but I believe he is. Mason Miller is probably my first place vote.
Okay.
In the American League. I mean, I know it's a reliever. I know he's only thrown basically, 18 innings at this point, but he's been so good. He's arguably the most dominant reliever in baseball right now. Like, he's got a negative FIP. And you can look into that stat however you want, but it's just so illustrative of how dominant he's been.
Believe me, I was almost like thrashed by Andrew Bailey when I had the gall to bring up ERA and not FIP. Are you kidding me? So yeah, so it's a good one. It's a good one.
I'll probably go Colton Cowser second.
Okay.
And I guess Willie Abreu, he's rookie eligible.
Yeah, see,
right?
but that's where we've landed.
Yeah, I mean right.
I know he has over 800 OPS, but I've seen Abreu play, and it's been so many stops and starts, but it's not bad. I mean, I think he could classify as top 5 in most years, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a 137 WRC plus. He's already 30% better than the league hitting wise.
Yeah.
And that's coming off last year in which he had a 135. So like, it's been pretty good. You don't look at him and say like, this is a guy who's an automatic all-star or should be contending for one. I get it. He strikes out a lot. He walks a lot. That's where a lot of his value comes from is in those walks. He can run into a ball occasionally too. But yeah, I think that's the point, right? Is that it kind of speaks to this class, especially on the American League side, that we're talking about Mason Miller, a reliever in the year 2024 as being a strong contender for Rookie of the Year, and Willie Abreu, who wasn't a top 100 candidate, wasn't much celebrated as like, oh, I can't believe he's on the opening day roster. Everybody get excited. He's probably in third place right now.
All right. So now we go to who are we going to? I'm not going to say overhyped because that's a negative connotation. But we probably will. We're all guilty of it. That's okay. That's part of the fun of baseball. But who are we going to get excited about in the next, let's say like leading into the trade deadline, because you'll get the obligatory, well, here's the best trade acquisition you can make. It's Junior Caminero, so, but who give me some guys that you feel like will be impactful guys, not necessarily guys who are going to be like, oh, well, they're going to get called up and sent down and get on a crappy team, but impactful guys who you feel will actually impact, because that's another thing. Like, as much as we've crapped all over some of these guys who have been called up, we do have examples of remember Elly De La Cruz last year, the shock, and now he leveled off. But still, like, there's nothing better than the shock and awe of having a Skenes performance or something like that we can get excited about. Who are the guys that are going to do that?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I think he'll probably be up before the trade deadline, but James Wood has to be that guy right now. I mean, people have asked me, with Skenes up, with Holliday already debuting, Camero's already seen the majors, Wyatt Langford's up there. Like, our next guy would be really exciting on our prospect list is James Wood. And he's been tearing the cover off the ball recently. Last 10 games, he's batting .474. His OPS is 1.465. He's got 5 homers in that span. I mean, he's massive, 6'6", 6'7", but shows better speed than you would think. You would just hear about that size and be like, okay, well, he doesn't move well. No, he moves really well in center field. He just eats up grass out there, and he can steal bases too with those long legs. All the pieces are there for him to be a potential superstar. He struck out more than 30% of the time last year at AA, which was a little bit questionable, but he's kept that more or less in check so far at AAA. I think one of the big questions for me right now is like how he's going to do against left-handed pitching. He's batting .235 against lefties, so that's kind of a question. But like we were saying before about the Nats, they're not really in a position now where they need a guy up or they need the help. They can kind of wait out James Wood and be like, okay, all the boxes are checked. We fully believe you're fully formed. And even if he's not, hitting above 250 for the first 2 weeks, with that power, with that speed, with that ability in the outfield, he has multiple ways that he can contribute and kind of be like that Elly De La Cruz. Elly De La Cruz really popped last year because of how quick he ran and the exit velocities he was posting. I think right now James Wood has the highest average X velocity at AAA, and it's above 95 miles an hour. So on average, he's hitting the ball hard. Never mind, just ball to ball. He can hit it above 110. So he'll wow some people with that. I think once he debuts, a lot of people will go into StatCast and see, like, how far did that last ball go? How hard was it hit? How fast did he move from first to third? All that kind of stuff. All
right, it's a good one. I would imagine another one is Caminero, right?
Yeah, Caminero is. I mean, we saw him at the tail end last year. He got called up for the stretch run. They called him up directly from Montgomery, AA Montgomery, to the majors, and then he made their postseason roster. So they obviously believe in him to some degree. Asking the Rays about him in the spring, it was, we want to get him every day looks at third base. He still has some work to go there. He hasn't seen AAA yet. We want to test him there. He's dealt with a quad injury early on. He came back and was healthy and was still hitting the ball hard. And he's just so young. I mean, he's younger than James Wood is, I think. And it's just an impactful bat. I think he'll have some of the loudest exit velos on the Rays. It's just, where do they put him? Because he's only been third base. He played shortstop earlier in his career, but like Isaac Paredes has been a good hitter at third base and hasn't played anywhere else. I know Yandy Diaz hasn't been great, so maybe you shift Paredes over. But I think it could be a little while longer until we see Caminero, but he's certainly knocking on the door, and he'll put up just as good as X velocities as Wood can.
So you had mentioned going AA to the majors. This is another thing, especially, I had cited recently Jordan Lawler when he started the year last year in AA, and then he went to the majors from there and was on the World Series roster. I've seen it before going back a few years, Yohan Moncada. I know there's a million other guys who've done it, but
Jackson Merrill, the guy you were talking about.
Yeah,
before.
Jackson Merrill. And so now, so from your view, being educated mind as yourself, is that like a feasible, obviously it's a feasible thing, but do you think that AAA is that important for a guy who is a top prospect? And one guy that jumps to mind for me right now, obviously, you have Marcelo Meyer with the Red Sox. He's doing pretty well. He lost basically a year of development last year, but he's on the same path as Jackson Merrill because he was a high school shortstop who was drafted the same year.
Right.
Same year as Jordan Lawler. So what's your take on making that jump from AA?
I think it's just because it's the gap between AAA and the majors is so big, but I also don't think the gap between AAA and AA is as big as it once was. I think you're seeing guys at AA, some with major league experience, but a lot of them at AA, especially on the arm side, are just good prospects who are there to get their work in, and the quality of stuff at AA is really good. So I don't think, like, if you're in a position of need, kind of like the Rays were last year during the stretch run, if you're in a position of need and you've got a guy at AAA and a guy at AA, but the guy at AA is the better prospect, I don't think that should hold him back. The good guys really figure it out, right? Like the ones who are at the top of these lists, they are there for a reason. They have the tools that can translate. For Jackson Merrill, it's always been barrel control, and I think that's a big reason why he was able to do that and handle the move to center field, is because he can be so disciplined at the plate and move his barrel around the zone really well. I wouldn't be too concerned about it, just because, again, that gap between AAA and AA isn't as big as it once was. I don't think you necessarily need to get AAA at bats. I think for Caminero, it was more on the defensive side than anything offensively. I think they could have started him offensively on opening day and not had a problem.
All right. Good answer, as always. All right. What do you got coming up? This has been the year of Sam Dykstra, I feel. It has. Ever since I saw you doing those interviews in spring training. How many, when you do those interviews, you did it from the MLB Network. I say interviews, you do a lot of interviews, but I'm saying for the MLB Network,
Right.
where you become a TV star. And you must look at those guys and you follow all these guys, but like a Jackson Jobe, that was one of your interviews, right? Correct?
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Yeah, you must look at hey, how's he doing? How's he doing? What's he going on? Does what he say line up with what he said on TV? You know, that sort of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love doing those interviews on camera. And you get prospects, you know this, Rob, like you get them early enough, they're more willing to talk about a lot of stuff. Getting Marcelo Meyer on that show and having him reveal that he had just gotten a buzz cut from Roman Anthony like the night before.
Yeah,
that was
big
great.
news.
I don't know if that would have happened if they were major league guys. He wouldn't have said that necessarily. Those guys like to have fun. I enjoyed doing them. They were quick hits, which is not something I'm used to. I'm used to long form interviews and talking a lot about development. So I got more personally as a reporter, talking to these guys on the side. You know, we're waiting for a camera to get set up, and talking to Jackson Jobe about his offseason, because I caught up with him in the Arizona Fall League last year. They're all touch points for these guys. And for me, you know, I'm following them since they were drafted. And, you know, I saw what you did in Lakeland, and I saw what you did in West Michigan, and now you're in Erie, and now you're pitching here. Like, what's changed along the way? Or last time I saw you working on a slider, how's that going? I love those conversations. I love getting to know these guys and check in with them whenever I can.
Well, you did a great job. You do a great job. And that Marcelo Meyer thing, by the way, it was a big deal. He got his hair cut, and then he said, we had him on the radio, and he said, yeah, I wanted to see what it was like when I got older. I'm like, you know, Marcelo, it doesn't really work that way.
You'll find out when you get older.
No, he's like, I said, he's like, it doesn't really work that way. You can, you know, other things change. There's a lot going on besides just getting a haircut. And he literally said, it's like, don't pin your problems on me. So, all right.
That guy's going to fit in Boston perfectly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I say this about Marcelo. He's just the right amount of cocky. Like, I feel like he's just the right amount of cocky. So,
I mean, there's always that thin line, right, between cocky and confident. And I think he's right on the line, but always confident. And I'll take that in my prospects. Like, if you're not confident in yourself, why should anybody else be confident?
Exactly. All right. Well, I'm confident that we're doing power rankings. You're top 3 breakout stars of 2024. All right, Sam. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Rob.